Hello, my beautiful friends. So this video is a little bit different. It's not part of the Advent series. It's just a discussion about Yule and what Yule is compared to the Celtic celebrations surrounding Christmas, modern pagan traditions involving Yule. So we are in the Yule season. So in historically Celtic tradition, holidays aren't just one day. So Samhain is a season; it's 7 days, right? And our eightfold wheel, the traditions, are usually, a festival period, so 7 days. So, but I'm really interested in Yule, and I'm really interested in sort of the resurgence or the ignited passion surrounding Yule. And Yule seems to be the holiday that even if you're not Christian, like let's say you're Jewish, or maybe you're pagan, or maybe you're no faith, right? People can kind of rally around Yule in the same way that I think people rally around what I would call American Halloween, right? Samhain, of course, is a religious tradition in some aspects, or a pre-Christian tradition in others. But Halloween is a sort of an American secular holiday, and Yule is sort of becoming that. So I was inspired to think about this because I watch a fellow called Jacob Toddson, and I'm going to link him below. He's got a great channel that's all devoted to different concepts in paganism, and I learn a lot, and I can think about things in terms of sort of putting things in buckets, because we often will attribute different characteristics to different bodies of people that don't actually apply. So, in terms of Christianity or the Celts, and again, like the Celts are a huge group of people, and there wasn't just one Celtic people. They come from all over and have varying traditions, and there's no unified, sacred text. There's no unified one body of leaders in the Celtic tradition. So, a lot of times when people are speaking about Celts, they're speaking about Scotland and Ireland and Wales and Isle of Man and Brittany and things like that, but the Celts actually are bigger than that. So, and you can Scooby-Doo and do a lot. But anyway, Jacob's video is very good. He has a lot of videos about Yule because it's his favorite holiday, and I recommend following his channel and learning more about different pagan specific traditions that he covers on his channel. So, but it led me to think about, what is the difference between Yule and Celtic Christianity's understanding of Christmas, or, the Yule period. Like, how did they celebrate Yule before, Columba came to Iona? Like, what was going on? So I thought I would use AI, Grok and Gemini and Perplexity and Claude, and also a new browser that I'm going to talk about in a hot second, to see what they had to say. So I first went to Grok, and Grok actually creates a lot of images. It created me this really fun video, which I'll show you. I just typed in "create a Yule experience," and it made me this video. Isn't that pretty? The only problem is they're short because I have the free account, so, All right, so I went to Grok and I asked, just compare the historical traditions of Yule to the historical traditions of Celtic Christmas, and it sort of laid it out pretty nicely. I would love for Jacob to comment and tell me if any of this is true, because I feel like I'm not qualified to vet, this information in a way that I might be if we were talking about literature, for example. So, the 3 steps to responsible AI use is ask a good question. The second is vet the response. That's the biggest part of AI use, and then decide how to share it. So I asked a question. It wasn't particularly good. I could have created a better question, but I wanted to keep it simple. But now that we're in the vetting place, I'm not actually sure what of this is true. So I'm going to compare the output here. I've asked the same exact question of the other AI models to see what it's come up with. So, here it talks about the difference, is really Yule, Germanic Norse, Scandinavian, Anglo-Saxon, Continental Germanic, pre-Christian, Iron Age Viking, survived into early medieval period, midwinter feast, marking the winter solstice, which is usually around December 21st or 22nd, the celebration of the return of the sun, because then the days get longer, ancestor veneration, peace oaths, and feasting. And then Celtic Christmas, according to Grok, is Gaelic, Irish, Scottish, Brythonic, Welsh, Briton, Cornish peoples. No Christian Celtic Christmas existed as such. Modern phrase sometimes used for how Christmas, a Christmas feast, was celebrated in historically Celtic-speaking regions, or for attempted reconstructions of supposed Celtic winter solstice traditions. There are no unified pan-Celtic midwinter festival equivalent to the Norse Yule. So that's really interesting. So what that says to me, if Grok is right, is that, we have attributed Celtic Christianity, Christmas traditions, Yule traditions, but there aren't really sources to document that it happened before Christianity. There's nothing out there that tells us that doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. It's just that we don't have sources to prove it, according to Grok. So the key point up front that it says is that there's no direct historical Celtic Christmas tradition that parallels Yule. The Celts, both insular and continental, did not have a documented major midwinter festival on the scale or with the same characteristics of Germanic Yule. What is often called Celtic Christmas today is usually medieval to modern Gaelic or Welsh Christmas folk customs, so after Christianization, 19th and 20th century Celtic revival or neo-pagan inventions that try to give Christmas a Celtic flavor or retroactively claim solstice rights for the Celts. So I think that's interesting, right? Because as Jacob says in his video, and I agree, I think Yule is for everybody, and I think the traditions that come with Yule are for everybody, because I'm inspired by the Benai faith. I'm not a member of their faith, but I'm inspired by that. We are all part of one religion. We've given it names, we've given it, people and leaders and books and stuff like that, but really at the core of all things, we all belong to nature, and all of God, all of the one, it's within all of us. So any kind of celebration that we have, any kind of way that we can bring meaning and light into our lives, no matter whether we call it Yule or Christmas, barring a belief in a deity or a savior, right? Anything that brings us closer to nature and brings us closer to one another and generates a love and light into the world, we can call it whatever we want, but at its very root, it's the same thing for all of us, no matter what we call it. So I think celebrating Yule is wonderful. I celebrate Christmas too, and I celebrate Yule. A lot of the traditions that we use in sort of secular modern Christmas celebrations, the tree, the wreaths, right? Those all date back to the Norse traditions. So, those weren't necessarily Celtic traditions. Those really did belong to the Norse, right, and their celebrations of Christmas, and I think they're great. They bring meaning, they bring light and love into the world. They're great, right? So it goes through, and I will share this link because it allows me to share this, so you can take a look at it in more detail. But it compares the winter traditions of the Celts to the Germanic Norse Yule, and it says that there is no named pan-Celtic or even regional midwinter festivals in Irish, Welsh, or Gaulish sources. So according to Grok, there was nothing. There wasn't a winter solstice celebration, predating Christianity. Now, again, it's fair to say that the Druids did not write things down, so we don't have written records from the Druids. They felt that language was sacred. It wasn't that they were illiterate. They felt language was sacred, and so everything was passed down through stories. But according to Grok, those stories don't even exist in an oral tradition either. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'd have to rely on someone like Jacob. I'd have to do more research to figure out if that is actually true. So the night of winter solstice is the timing in the Germanic Norse Yule. The four major fire festivals, Imbolc, I say Beltane, but it's not actually pronounced that. It's a Belatane, I think, is how that's said. Lunasa and Samhain is the closest winter festival, but it's not midwinter. Primary deity figure, Odin, is the Norse Germanic figure. There's no clear evidence in the Celtic tradition. Some authors talk about the Dagda, the Morgan, Cailleach, who is, we talked about Cailleach before, who in some traditions turns into Bridget, and and in some traditions she has a battle with Bridget at spring, but no primary texts support a solstice cult. So there aren't any sources that document any of that, and we don't know how far back those stories go. Then there's some key rituals, swearing oaths, a huge feast, drinking, the Yule log, visiting homes, but there's no recorded Yule log event equivalent in the Celtic tradition. No midwinter oath swearing, no evidence of a 12-day midwinter feast. There's some evidence of the evergreens, the Irish wreaths at New Year's, but late and probably borrowed. So again, there aren't a lot of sources that document the Celtic, a Celtic tradition surrounding Yule. So survivals into Christmas, there's a ton for the Norse tradition, right? The Yule boar, the Christmas ham, the Christmas log, right? Father Christmas, who is a lot like Odin. But in the Celtic tradition, it's mostly post 11th century Christian. So, the caroling, wassailing, Hogmanay, because in Scotland they couldn't celebrate Christmas, so they moved everything over to Hogmanay. So I think it goes into the specific customs that are often misattributed to Celtic Christmas. Mistletoe, and that's classical Roman and later Germanic or Nordic, but it's often said to be Celtic, and it says, according to Grok, in the 19th century Celtic revival, right? So holly and ivy, there's no evidence that says that it's ancient Celtic, but it's called that. The Yule log, no one has ever, according to Grok, claimed that the Yule log is Celtic, and that is explicitly Germanic or Norse. Wassailing sometimes is claimed as Celtic, but there's no Irish or Welsh equivalent. The Anglo-Saxons and later English do the wassailing, going around and singing. The 12 days of Christmas is Germanic, but there's no Celtic parallel. And the Wren boys, Irish Christian era custom, St. Stephen's Day. And then it's presented as ancient Druidic in some neo-pagan literature, but first documented in the 17th and 18th century. So the summary table that they give you, which I thought Grok did a pretty good job with this, there's not a major winter feast in the sources that we have about Celtic Christmas or Celtic Yule. Winter solstice emphasis, none attested. Yule log, no. 12-night celebration, no. Swearing oaths over drink, no. Boar sacrifice, no. Evergreens present in the late medieval period, but not proven to be ancient or solstice specific. Survival into modern Christmas, mostly displaced by Scottish Irish New Year, Hogmanay, Cailleach customs. So Yule's well-documented pre-Christian Germanic Norse midwinter solstice with clear continuity into the later Christmas traditions. Celtic Christmas is essentially a modern construct. The historical Celts had no equivalent midwinter festival. Most distinctly Celtic winter customs that survive today are either late Christian era or practices of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, or Romantic inventions. So I thought that was a very interesting study by Grok, because then when you compare it to something like Gemini, I asked the same question. And it focused on, in the Celtic traditions, it talked about the Cailleach, the winter hag, the, nature spirits. And it says that these things are true, where Grok said we don't have enough evidence. Gemini says that there is enough evidence, right? So, I think it's important when we use AI that we think about what sources are the material being trained on, and it's definitely important to vet the results, because these results are very different than the results from Grok, right? So it talks about the candle in the window, which is something that the Celts do, but is that pre-Christian? I don't think so. I think that's a Christian practice of lighting the way for Christ. So that's not the Yule goat and the wren boy again. it's talking that the wren boy is specific to St. Stephen's Day, the king of all birds. Again, compared to Grok, Grok says, that's not pre-Christian. That's not, that's not in the same timeline as the Norse. Evergreens, so it goes through. I don't know if I can share this, but I will try. And it has some video recommendations, which I'll share. So then I tossed it into Perplexity, and what did Perplexity say? Celtic Christmas traditions developed later as the church overlaid the nativity cycle into existing Celtic midwinter customs. So this one takes a lukewarm approach and doesn't have the heart to tell people that Celtic Yule is not a thing, right? It doesn't want to say that. So the Celtic Christianity that we celebrate today has come since Christianity. There isn't anything before that. So that's interesting. I'll see if I can share this. Yule and Celtic traditions. This is from Claude. So it talks about the different practices and the terminology. And again, this one, it's also saying that, the traditions that we ascribe to Celtic, the Celtic world, aren't pre-Christian, right? They come after Christianity. And then I used a new browser. You can install Comet for free. So this is an AI browser, and so I asked the same question here, and it says Yule and Celtic Christmas share winter solstice timing and some similar symbols, but they arise from different religious frameworks and developed in different historical phases. Yule is primarily a pre-Christian Germanic Norse midwinter festival, while Celtic Christmas refers to Christian celebrations in Celtic regions that absorbed earlier Celtic and later Norse customs. So Comet, seems to be working off the same training grounds, I think, as Grok, and and indicates that they're a different timeline. So you're probably wondering, like, well, why does this matter? Who cares? It's interesting, right? It's interesting to use AI to solve, problems, but it's also interesting to use AI to compare and to Scooby-Doo things that we always hold dear as truth, right? So, if we think, oh, well, we swear by the idea that there was, Celtic winter solstice activities, if our faith directs us to believe that, that's fine. But if we want proof of that, then we have to go looking for the proof. And so this is absolutely helpful. AI gives you a place to start, and it gives you a way to think about things and to ask different questions. So I'm all about Celtic spirituality. I'm all about honoring our ancestors and honoring the traditions that came to us from the beginning of time until today. But it's important to be accurate about what that might be. So I watch channels like Jacob's, even though Jacob and I are in two very different traditions, because he has knowledge about systems and customs that I do not. And I find value in learning about what he's talking about, and then I go and I vet it and decide if I want to adopt any of those traditions for myself, because I think that each one of us is responsible to make and bring meaning into our own lives about what we want to honor and what we want to celebrate. And so whether you're Christian or not, or pagan or not, or atheist or not, we each choose what we want to celebrate and honor. Light, love, the coming of light, the coming of love. If in the Christian church, that's tied to the birth of Jesus. But outside the Christian church, the coming of light. When the solstice arrives, then we get more light each day. So you can honor just that if that is what brings you meaning and hope. So I hope you enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun to do. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and however you approach solstice or Christmas, or what you think about AI and the use of these kinds of discoveries. I would be so interested to hear your thoughts. I am so glad that you're here. I'm wishing you all the very best in light and love. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.